to tell you the story of Scholars for Community Outreach, Partnership, and Engagement. It's the story of a relatively unique organization on campus at the University of Alabama. And really the way that I'd like to tell the story is as a series of, or an assemblage of stories that are sort of kid stories. And I see kid stories as the kind of stories that either we tell about our children or that our parents tell about us. And these are the stories that tell other folks how we came to be and also how we came to be who we are. So with that said, there is one thing that I'd like to say also, and that is that there are many parents to Scope. And the parents that I'd like to acknowledge at the beginning of this presentation are those that have collaborated with me in doing this presentation. Jackie Brodsky, George Daniels, Attorney Richwood, Marianne Whitaker, and Joshua White, two of whom are here today. So I'm glad that they're here, and I hope that they'll continue to collaborate with me in taking questions perhaps on the presentation. So, origins of Scope. We really began thinking about Scope in conversations following NOSC 2008, and that was after the Penn State Conference. And what we recognized is that the Emerging Engagement Scholars Workshop was an amazing opportunity for graduate students to think through how they could do engagement work once they got back to their universities and continued with their coursework. But we thought, you know, what would it look like for us to offer this kind of opportunity or a version of this kind of opportunity here on campus at the University of Alabama? And so in spring 2009, we started recruiting and organizing students to be a part of this conversation about what that would look like. In the fall 2009, we had our first meetings. We also sent our first Emerging Engagement Scholar to NOSC in 2009. And in 2010, Scope was officially born. Now there's some things that you should know about the University of Alabama context. Roll Tide. The first thing that you should know is that in 2008, we gained our Carnegie classification as an engaged institution. And this was a really important step for us. And out of that process came a recommendations report in 2009 that included a series of suggestions to the university about how we could continue to move forward as an engaged institution. One of those recommendations was that we make service learning a hallmark component of the experience and education of University of Alabama students. And in conjunction with that, what we also found is that before and after we became a Carnegie classified institution, there were increasing opportunities for students to participate in research, both at the graduate and undergraduate level. So there was sort of a confluence of important work being done that made us ready to do engaged scholarship and ready to have an organization like Scope. Now, as everybody knows, when you have a kid, it's really important that you have a support structure there to help you in thinking through issues of parenting and how to bring this kid into the world in successful and positive ways. And we had just such a support structure at the university, including the graduate school. The graduate school has been a hugely important partner for us. For example, this year we have our first Scope graduate research assistant, and her responsibility is really to help us in implementing many of the activities and projects that are related to Scope, both in terms of what we do and how we document what we learn from what we do. In addition, all of the colleges at our university have some involvement in Scope, and in particular, the Honors College and New College, which is an interdisciplinary bachelor and now doctoral degree program, have really been instrumental because of the way that they involve research for their undergraduates and because of the way that they are interdisciplinary. Also, sorry for that typo, the Center for Community-Based Partnerships is another important support for us. We have a council that's comprised of faculty, staff, students, and community partners that gets together quite regularly to talk about issues related to engagement work. We have seed grants that are offered once a year, not offered, awarded once a year And anyone can apply for a seed grant, and those grants are awarded to individuals who undertake collaborative, engaged work with one another. We also have a journal out of the Center for Community-Based Partnerships, the Journal for Community Engagement and Scholarship. And SCOPE members participate in this journal through reviewing student submissions to the journal. So they really have an opportunity to have experience in different kinds of work associated with the scholarly life. So SCOPE's mission and objectives I see as relatively simple. We want to create a culture of engagement at the University of Alabama, a culture of engagement that supports student involvement in research. And the way that we have done this so far is to offer workshops, supportive mentoring relationships, induction into activities like JASIS that I talked about just now, and also leadership in the campus community. We have accomplished a good bit in a very short amount of time. We have continued presence at the Emerging Engagement Scholars Workshop. I think we've sent at least 1 or 2 people every year. We have formed a steering committee that is comprised of faculty, staff, students, and I think it will be a next step for us to also have community partners as a part of that steering committee. We've had 2 successful workshops in the 2010-11 year. One of our workshops was on mentoring relationships, where we had faculty who had been involved in engaged work talk about how they assisted students in being a part of that work. And we also had students talk about the possibilities and challenges involved in doing engaged scholarship from a student perspective. We also had a workshop on IRB issues in engaged scholarship, and I don't know if the University of Alabama is anything like any of your institutions, but there are lots of issues to be worked out when we think about how to do engaged scholarship in ways that honor and respect human subjects, our participants, our partners in the process. So we had the first of our workshops organized around that topic. Now, as we look toward the future, there are lots of ways that we're going to continue to grow. The first important way is through the negotiation of student voice and direction within SCOPE. And one of the things that we've been in conversation about a lot over the past few weeks is SCOPE an organization for students, or is it an organization with students? And that is a very important distinction. I think when we first began, we were really an organization for students. There is a program at UA called Tied Together, which is also another kind of support for graduate students who are doing research. And that program in some ways served as a model for us. But as we have thought about what we're trying to achieve, really the University of Alabama is on a trajectory where at the same time we're developing engaged scholars, we're also developing as an engaged university. And so the student voice in that process has been incredibly important. But to be honest, kind of keeping with the parenting story, as a parent, you're not ever supposed to talk about how crappy parenting sometimes can be, right? It's hard work, but you're always supposed to say, it's great, I love it, it changed my life in so many important ways, it's been so fun. Okay, there's been some growing pains. But I think that one of the important things about the approach that we've taken is to really be open and honest with each other and say, how can we work these things out? And I think that having the student voice be more equally represented at the table is ironically sort of the same kind of conversation that we've been having about having the community partner voice represented more equally at the table. And so this is something that we're going to continue to work on in this year and in the coming years. Additionally, we want to look at the implementation of coordinated engagement research development opportunities for undergraduate and graduate students. We've offered a series of workshops, but I think what we've also realized is that students are at different points in their development, and they need sort of a trajectory that allows them to work through how to do research bit by bit. So I'd like to close with some questions and considerations that we're thinking about as we continue to develop scope. The first is, like I've talked about, how can we support multiple voices within student-based engagement scholarship groups? The second question is, what developmental trajectories need to be acknowledged in our support of students as engaged scholars? And this is particularly relevant for us because our group involves undergraduates and graduate students. And those groups of people are at different places in their educational careers, different places in their understanding of what research is, and therefore different places in their understanding of what engaged scholarship can be. And lastly, in what ways do our institutional contexts continue to shape the support of students' engaged scholarship? I think that our university's support of our work has been a critical component of the success of SCOPE, but we need to continue to engage with our institution and how to support SCOPE and engage scholarship.